welcome to episode 2 of the Wise Wife radio program. So glad that you're joining. And this week, you are going to be able to call in. So I want you to write down the number to call in. The number is 708-223-8953. And I'm going to give that number again. It is 708-223-8953. So I want you guys to call in. So I want it to be a conversation. So if you are joining me for the first time, let me bring you up to speed. I am Lynn Sharif, and they call me the Wise Wife. So why do they call me that? It's because I've been married collectively for 30 years with a first and second marriage, over 30 years. And guess what? I didn't always get it right. I did not get it right for sure in my first marriage. I am way too familiar with family court in Chicago, Illinois. I know 50 West Washington, 19th floor entirely too well. I did the crash and learn method in my marriage the first time. I didn't have a clue. And if you are similarly in a marriage, you have your friend circle, you have your family, they may very well be helpful to you. And that's great. It is very, very good to have a circle. You really do need that circle. But if you're listening to me, I want to share with you godly wisdom, advice, and solutions, because it's only godly wisdom that's going to usher you into a breakthrough and heal your struggling marriage if you choose to accept it. So that really is what has gotten me in my second marriage to 22 years. Yes, we have absolutely had our struggles. And we have by no means crossed the finish line. As a matter of fact, if you have anyone who tells you, we got it, this is a piece of cake, I don't know if they're telling you the truth, but I am here to tell you that yes, while we have had our struggles, and we've also learned things because we have committed ourselves to having the best marriage that we can. We have counseling, we stay on the wall, and staying on the wall essentially means that we don't get slack. We don't get slack and don't think that we need things to help us. I shared with you even on last week that, yeah, there are even seasons when maybe we didn't want to try as hard, but we are committed to living out the rest of our lives married to each other. And so we want to be wonderfully married. We do not want to be miserably married. If you get slack, I call those some of the little weeds that can grow up. And you know how weeds can grow in your flower garden? If you let those weeds get in, they can come through the cracks and they can choke you out. And so the bottom line is that I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I made in my first marriage. And I don't want you to know the family court in your hometown as well as I know the one here in Chicago. So last week, I told you that I was going to talk to you about the man and the woman's role in marriage. And if you're just joining, if you have something to say, please give me a call. The number here is 708-223-8953. Again, 708-223-8953. So I said I was going to talk to you about the man and the woman's role in marriage. And if you're married and you're on the line, I want you to think about it. Where did you get the idea about men and women's role in marriage? Where did those ideas come from for you? Did they come from your parents? Did they come from watching different friends? Did it come from the Bible? I'm just curious as to where those ideas came from. How did you come upon what your role is supposed to be in your marriage? And so, yeah, I looked at my parents. I definitely saw that they had a more traditional marriage where my father worked. And for the early part of my life, my mother didn't work. She was at home. But during my childhood, she went back to school. She got a college degree and she did go to work. She was a teacher for many, many years. My dad went to work. I always say that he had an incredible work ethic. He would cancel Christmas, but he did do things around the house. So my mom cooked and cleaned. But the reality is that when it comes down to your marriage, you have got to figure out what works for you. What works for you and what works for you to have a peaceful home. So I always believe that whoever is better at a thing, let them do that thing. So if your husband or if the wife is better at managing the money, let them manage the money. You shouldn't be so held to these rigid standards that you say that I need to manage the money because I'm the man. No, let's go with who the better manager is. And then who's the better cook? Now, people who know me know that I'm married to a chef, but he can't chef all day, every day. He has to have a break. So we've just decided that if he cooks, I clean. If I cook, he cleans. So we share that responsibility. And as it relates to how you keep your home, if you're old enough, you may remember The Odd Couple. The Odd Couple was Felix and Oscar, and Oscar was not the neatest, and Felix was the neat one. So in my house, I am the Felix to my husband's Oscar. And I'm going to tell you one of the best pieces of advice I ever got with regards to how to keep your home. It came from Anna Hannah, and Anna Hannah is the wife of the pastor of my church. And she said something that had a huge impact on me. And what she said was that if you can't pick up that sock or that shirt that's been discarded on the floor, if you cannot pick that up without an attitude, then you need to leave it there. Leave it there. And I thought, this woman must have a camera in my house. She must have seen me, because I would clean. I would take on organizing his closet, but I was mad the whole time. I'm picking stuff up like, I can't believe he's so just junky. How can you live this way? I mean, I'm mad. And the reality is he could come home and I would have an attitude over the entire conversation I was having as I was straightening stuff up. And so I had to change my mindset there and realize that I had to do it with joy, because it's what I'm best at. He's never going to be super organized. And so I have to accept that. And the point is that we want to have a peaceful home, and I'm better at it. So just do that thing. So drop in the chat if you are married. Has that been an issue for you? Cleaning, household chores, that type of thing. In our house, whoever is there and it needs to be done, if the garbage needs to go out, whatever needs to be done, we just do it. So we don't fall to those traditional man only does this, woman only does that. But there are deeper meanings when we are talking about roles in marriage, a much deeper meaning. The Bible gave two specific commands. The two specific commands that God gave were to women to submit to your husbands as they submit to the Lord. And then for the man, it said, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And I'm going to just take a real quick pause there, because I see a couple of comments and I want to make sure that I address them before I move forward. Stage-worthy speaker, I believe that's Joy Johnson. She said that was a hard lesson for her, that her husband is not the organized one. I have someone else who said, Carla said that she is frustrated about open drawers and things that don't go back where they're supposed to go. And so I'm not the only one who felt frustration. So I'm hoping that for the ladies who have felt that way, that little piece of advice, that if you can't do it and not be joyful, then don't do it. Find your way to the idea of just having peace and order in your home. And again, if you want to call in, 708-223-8953. So the Bible gave two specific commands: women to submit to your husband, and for a husband to love their wives as Christ loved the church. So women, submitting to your husband, a man's greatest need, and I'm going to say this many more times, a man's greatest need is for reverence and respect. Reverence and respect. Men go to great lengths for respect. And likewise, men, the Bible says to love your wives. There's no command for a woman to love her husband. The command is for respect and reverence. So ladies, first, let's talk about that. Let me just throw this whole concept out that submissiveness is a bad thing. It does not mean that you are subservient, that you're brainless, that you're just this doormat that submits to your husband in everything, that your husband is superior to you, that he's a tyrant, a domineering tyrant that is demanding his way, my way or the highway. That's not what this is. Let me be clear that biblical submission never dominates, it never demeans, it never abuses another person. It does not require that either spouse deny their gifts, deny their personalities, or shut off their intellect. That is not what this is supposed to be. The subservient narrative that has taken hold in some places, it is not supported in the creation theory. God never intended for it to be that way, but people have perverted it. But it is not that way. We are equal in the sight of God. So there certainly are limitations to submission. It is in keeping, your submission to your husband is in keeping to his submission to God. So that makes it really, really clear. So if he wants you to rob a store, the answer is obviously no, because that's not in keeping with what God wants. So again, godly wisdom, advice, and solutions. That's what I want to offer you. But with regards to submission, you are meant to work alongside your husband to make your marriage succeed while allowing him to take the lead. And we're going to talk about that. Take the lead. So here's the deal. The deal is that when God created man, he created Adam first. So there is a hierarchy that everybody has a different function. We're equal in importance, but we each have different functions. So the man is the head of the woman as God is the head of Christ. So there has to be a chain of command in order for there to be order. So let me give you an example. Hierarchy, chain of command. So what if you were a mom and you asked your child to do something? And let's take it a step further. Imagine that maybe what you were asking your child to do, maybe you were in the wrong. Maybe. But what if your child said, "That is the dumbest thing I ever heard. Why am I doing that?" Think about that. They would not be able to pull out a phone fast enough for the wrath that would be coming their way. And why? Because they are to respect the position. They have to respect the position as the parent, your position as the parent. And so likewise, it is your husband's call. What if he's dead to wrong? I'm not saying that you have to remain silent. I'm not saying that. Because remember, we have equal in importance, but difference in function. So it might look like this. You might say something like, "Babe, I don't really agree with your decision." And this perhaps is after you've offered to him what it is that is your advice on how to proceed with whatever the decision is. but I'm going to respect your right to make this decision. I'm going to pray that we have the best outcome. So I'm not saying that you are to remain silent. So something else that's important about this respect is that respect is actually a form of influence. That is really what women have. We have influence. And so you respecting your husband is a form of influence, because keep in mind that nagging and being nasty, show me someone where that's worked. Nagging and being nasty just doesn't work. We really are, because of our influence. Can you just be kind? Can you just show a little sweetness? Can you do that? Because the opposite of that is being strong and violent. Again, show me where that's worked before. I don't think it does. So a few years ago, there's a guy named Birdman, and he was talking to Charlemagne, and he said, put some respect on my name. So I'm going to give you 4 practical ways to show your husband respect. And again, if you want to talk to me, please give me a call at 708-223-8953. And so I'm hearing that there are some folks who had some hard lessons to learn and also learn to operate in their strengths. So thank you for that. And Jackie said something that I've heard. I love that. The man is the head, but the wife is the neck. And guess what? There is no head that moves without a neck. So that's good, Jackie. I appreciate that. So 4 practical ways to show your husband respect. The first thing is to accept the fact that he is human and he is going to make mistakes. He's human just like us, and he's going to make mistakes. When he does make a mistake, please don't say, I told you so. If you would have listened to me, you would. Don't do that. Don't do it. Pray that in the long run, that even if it is a mistake, that the best thing will happen in the end. All things work together, even the mistakes. Number 2, please do not dog him out to friends. And for all things that are holy, please do not dog him out to family. Do not do that. Don't do it. If you need an outlet, remember that wise person that's in your life, you can share with them. But I just want you to be careful to not talk him down in front of others. Before we do 3 and 4, we've got a call coming in. Hello, caller.
Hello, Lynn. So I have a question for you.
Sure.
I'm going to remain anonymous, though.
Absolutely.
So my husband and I, we've been married 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
And something that happened for us was we started having children within the first 6 months of dating. Then we had another child and another child. And so 4 children later, 13 years, we've been parents. Haven't had an opportunity to be partners, be friends. And it's almost to the point, we don't even know how to, where to start. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's maybe I don't want to do this, but just want to get some insight, some wisdom on, we wasn't able to be friends first. We immediately became parents. And that's where we've kind of landed. We're parents.
And that is a very, very important job. It's an important job. And when you have children, oftentimes our children take over our complete schedule. Are you finding that to be the case in your life?
Absolutely. They run everything.
They do. They do. So you really have to start small. Start small because keep in mind that those 4 children got here because you all were able to connect. And so maybe it is as small as looking at some pictures from when you were dating. Looking at those pictures can help bring back some of the memories of why you all got together. That day that you all said I do, you couldn't keep your hands off of each other. You couldn't wait to spend the rest of your lives together. And those feelings are not gone. It's just that you need to remind yourself. Remind yourself. Do you guys do date nights at all?
So not as consistent as we would like. Something that we are trying to get into, but sometimes what I like, he doesn't. What he likes, I don't. So we're trying to work on compromising in that area because it's important, but not as consistent as we should.
Understand, but at least it's on your mind. You know that this is an area that you need to do better in and be very intentional about. And so my advice would be to just be consistent as you can, be intentional about finding that time. I'm going to say fight for that time. Fight for that time. Like put it in a book, make a date and keep it, because I completely understand when you have children, it can take over your entire life and then you can start forgetting. So do that. Be intentional. Mark your date night and try to find some time to get away. That would be huge. A staycation. Go to whatever suburb you can get a great hotel room, get a babysitter and go. Because if you can do and set those things up, then you can rediscover why you got together in the first place. You did not get children because you didn't love each other. So that's my advice. I really appreciate you calling.
Thank you so much.
So folks, we left off at the 4 things that you can do to put some respect on his name. We were at number 3, and that is focus on his strengths. Keep in mind that men have a fear of inadequacy. Your words are going to give him the strength that he needs to do the hard things. And as an African-American man, I can speak to African-American men, they have a hard way to go. And so the way that you are going to influence him is through the sweet words that are coming out of your mouth. And speaking of that mouth, the 4th thing is going to be for you to be far more intentional about not just what you say, but when you say it and how it comes out. Remember that the power of life and death is in your tongue. And that is something I can do a whole show on that, and we will. But for now, save yourself a lot of grief and be very intentional about what you say, how you say it, and when you say it. So if your husband isn't living up to what God has commanded, maybe you don't feel that he is doing that. Take a look at how he grew up. Did he grow up without a father? That is, maybe he didn't have an example, because that is absolutely the case. I think about my own husband. He was raised by a strong, not domineering. She was a strong woman, but she was a single parent. And so he didn't have a man in the house by which to pattern himself after. But what he did is he looked at what things his mom didn't have, and he tried to pattern himself after that. So I talked about what women need to do, but men have a huge, huge responsibility. The Bible really does speak way more to what men need to do than what women need to do. Again, equal importance, just different roles. But if the husband is the head, if he's the CEO, he has to make sure that the owner, God, make sure that the owner's desires are carried out the way God intended. And remember, I mentioned that Adam was the first guy there. I mean, when he created man, Adam was it. So the instructions that God gave to Adam were really about how to cover his family. Men are called to be servant leaders. They are called to sacrificially serve. In other words, to make the welfare of their wives and their family a priority. They are called to nourish and cherish their wives and work with God to help her achieve her highest potential. Now, that responsibility cannot be abdicated or ignored. Oh, well, she doesn't respect me, so I'm not doing that. God gave that command to man. So it is what he is being held responsible for. Men are also called to cover their wives. And if you're in the chat, drop in the chat, what do you think it means to cover your wife? What does that mean? What I can tell you is that as a woman, the highest need is security. And so a man gives his wife that security by covering her. And so as you drop it in the chat, I will let you know how my husband covers me. My husband pretty much dresses me. He is the person who shops for my clothes. He's great at it. So he makes sure that I'm dressed well. He cooks for me. If I have to be somewhere, he's cooking an omelet, my favorite breakfast, to make sure that I'm good. I remember once a few years ago that I was working with women's ministry, and we went into a neighborhood at night because we were going to pray for women. And it was in not a great area in Chicago. It was on 79th Street. And so he went with me and he sat across the street in the car. And I was like, well, I'm going to be okay. He's like, okay, great. You get knocked in the head. And they asked me where I am or where was I. So he sat across the street. And I remember another time that I had a conference not terribly far away, about an hour and a half away. And I forgot something really important. And he didn't tell me that he was going to do it, but he drove it to me. And so I see in the chat that supporting and protecting me, that is what covering is. And that is what God requires of a man. And so keep in mind this part. When a man messes up and say he fails to live up to the responsibility, you don't have to be the one there telling him that he didn't live up to the responsibility, because he's probably being harder on himself than you could ever be. And I don't really care how big, how strong, how masculine he is. Failure is nakedness. And that nakedness is a vulnerability that's not comfortable. And so you may find that if he is not living up to his responsibility, some of the clues might be that he is escaping, maybe through alcohol, maybe through smoking a blunt, maybe throwing himself into work, or always being in front of the TV, or being more focused on his job, or maybe even just a low-level depression over it. Feelings of inadequacy. This can come out if he is not living up to that responsibility. And so remember that I said that as a woman, it's about influence. And women have the most power in changing the tone of their home through their words. So I'm going to ask you to just think on that one. So I am summing it up by saying that a man's need is for honor and respect. He wants to be friends with you, but he doesn't want you to mother him. He already has a mother. He doesn't need you to mother him. They have a need for sex. They need that support at home. They need you to hold it down. And for women, our needs are security, non-sexual communication, real communication, talk to her, and leadership, lead the home, but not domination. So ultimately, what I want and what God says he wants is mutual submission. Submit yourselves one to another. And that sacrificial love, that's something that you both can do. Make your home a place where you all are trying to outdo each other, not in a way to show off. But what I'm saying is that the best way to get to your mate's heart is if they see you going out of your way, thinking when you wake up, what can I do this morning to let my spouse know that I care about them? What can I do to treasure them and to see them the way God sees them? Don't be focused on your own individual interests, but really being focused on serving each other. So, as we transition from this subject, if there's anyone who wants to call in, please do not hesitate. Call me at 708 223 8953. And you are here listening to The Wise Wife, Lynn Sharif, and I am here to share with you godly wisdom, advice, and solutions. Because really, with godly wisdom, that can really help to usher a breakthrough, the breakthrough that you may need to make your marriage better. So last week, I read this question, and I'm going to read it again. And I'm going to give an answer to this from two different perspectives. So the question was this: I have been married for 15 years. I'm 55 years old, and my wife is 52. We have 2 children. My wife is experiencing menopause. She works 12 hours a day. She's exhausted. She doesn't have the energy for sex. There are times that she may agree to have sex, and then she just never gets around to it. And so I'm thinking about finding someone for the sake of mutual pleasure and just keeping it quiet. Or should I just come out and ask her if I can look for someone to have sex with me? So I'm going to answer that question from 2 different perspectives. My first piece of advice to you is to not have an affair, even if it's just for sex. I assure you that that affair will greatly complicate your life. You may think that no one will know, but I promise you, what's done in the dark will probably come to light. There's a danger of you potentially being outed by someone that you know, or being seen by someone who knows you or your wife. I even know of someone who was seen by a friend of his children. And so the ripple effect that can have, it just can shake you to the core. And so I assure you that it's not worth it. If you choose that other option of asking for a hall pass, that's out of my territory. She may say yes, but that's out of my territory. I cannot speak to open marriages. That's not my deal. But the point is that this is a really difficult scenario. The other perspective that I want to bring into this is that of your wife. I completely understand where she is. I deal with menopause symptoms, and I understand that. Some of you in the audience might be dealing with this thing, or maybe you have lack of sexual desire because of medication or some other medical condition. So I understand that. And so if your perspective as a woman is just to say no, and that's just it, what is your mate to do? What are they supposed to do with that? I can only think of a few options. If you're just saying no, that's it, I'm not doing anything. Your husband could get a girlfriend, like the writer suggested, even if it's not romantic. Maybe they get a friend with benefits. 2, they masturbate to porn. Is that what you want? Or 3, he could just decide to leave. Because I don't believe that it should be just a hard no, I'm not doing it. Your body doesn't belong to you when you're married. There are alternatives out there. There are alternatives. I found a great article that talked about if you are experiencing a lack of sexual desire, maybe due to menopause, to actually look at external ways, because maybe you need to find out if your parts are broken, but perhaps you can bring in toys, bring in some external thing that can really help with this. And as a woman, there are other things you can do. So the answer is not just no. You got your hands, there are other things that you can do. You can do all of that, because the idea is that you're supposed to be the cheerleader. You're supposed to cheer him across the line. And so you need to find the way to get him across the line. And so find and search out those alternatives. No is not the final answer here. Do something. And so the other reality is that in marriage, you married for better or worse. And there may be a time in your marriage when worse happens, but you have to be there for better or for worse. And the answer is not, I'm just going to dip out. You need to sit down and you guys need to seriously talk about it. And she may have to do some things that she wasn't doing before. She was just choosing no before. But now you have to say, we're going to find some alternatives. You're going to be the cheerleader and help me get across the finish line. So that's really what being married is about. Let's see if we have any comments here. Okay. Wonderful. So I have talked today about men's role in marriage and women's role in marriage. And we also have talked about how to handle some of the sexual problems. And I am going to do a longer show on that, because there are some other things that as a woman you can do. I just realized I could not suffer through hot flashes. I couldn't suffer through the dip in sexual desire. I couldn't do that. So I found options. So I definitely want to talk more about that. And so also, if there are subjects that you would like to talk about, please email me. My email was broken, so I hope that you didn't get a rejection to your email last week, but it is working now. So you can email me at lynn@lynsharif.com and give me ideas, things that you want to talk about. I definitely want to hear that. Also, please share this show. I'm live on Instagram, live on Facebook. Also, we'll have a link to YouTube. So please share this with other couples so that they too can get godly wisdom, advice, and solutions. And so I am so pleased that you have joined me this week. And I look forward to seeing you again next week, same time, same location. Take care.